Hello and welcome to Brand X Reviews, and welcome back to the BXR mailbag section, which is a new thing that I've kind of started doing in the last few weeks. New for 2015 basically, where viewers can email in, they can leave comments in either the website or the YouTube channel or the Facebook page, and just kind of ask us questions about the kind of things that we normally talk about. When I say we, there's me and there's also my co-reviewer, the Core, as well, so if there's anything that he's talked about specifically, I know he's talked about Doctor Who and stuff like that, and Robin of Sherwood, stuff that I'm not really into. Anything like that, if you've got any questions, send it in, we'll probably do a video about it. So the last couple of videos were done, the last questions that were posted, were questions that were prompted by the same person, a guy called Paul Cage, and thanks very much, keep them coming. This one though is done by a different person, so and it's Marvel related as well. So Marvel does tend to be something that gets brought up a lot on Brand X Reviews because there's so much stuff coming out, and there's gonna be a lot of stuff coming out in the next few years. So there's a lot of kind of question marks about where they're gonna go with the films. So yeah, this one is Marvel related anyway. So let's see. This one is from Sam Make It So Lewis, Star Trek fan. I got what he did there. Okay, so the question itself anyway. Let's have a look at this. Okay, big question for you, which no doubt has a long and complicated answer. I'm a fan of the Marvel franchise, but confess to being behind on the movies. Just finished Captain America the First Avenger. I have, however, not read any of the comics and or graphic novels, and am very eager to get into them. I would greatly appreciate some guidance on where to start with these. I'm a fan of the X-Men, Avengers, and not watched yet but interested in Guardians of the Galaxy. Which comics/graphic novels would you suggest I start with to really get my teeth into the backstories, etc.? Cheers in advance. Great question, Sam. Basically, where do you start? I mean, there is a wealth of history to Marvel comics and their characters, going back to the Second World War era, literally. I don't just mean that that's when they're set, I mean that's when they were coming out, things like Captain America, Submariner. Some of the early comics, when Marvel was known as Timely Comics, kind of changed the name sometime later. But yeah, there's a lot of origin stories that you can read. Now, comics over the years have kind of changed a lot of the origin stories as well, so it's a mixed bag of things. And I would just say this, in the context of your question, you're basically saying that you like the films and feel a need to read the comics, thinking that this might enrich your viewing experience, which it certainly can. You are right there, but I would just throw this out there: you do not need to read any of the comics to enjoy the films. They don't really pull from the comics in the same sense that, say, films that come out based on TV series. I mean, you're a Star Trek fan, so I mean, for you to enjoy like some of the Star Trek films, particularly the Next Generation ones like First Contact, Insurrection, and what was it, Nemesis as well, if anyone enjoyed those films, you do kind of need to have seen the TV series because it ties in. Whereas the comics and superhero films that they do based on the comics, they aren't canon, as I'm sure you'll appreciate that. I'd just like to interrupt myself while I'm making this point as well, because when I'm talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm of course talking about the films that have been made specifically by Marvel Studios itself, and not the licensed properties that they sold the rights to their movie characters. So what I'm generally talking about here is Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, the First Avenger, Avengers Assemble, Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, and everything that's to come from that point on. So we'll have Avengers Age of Ultron and Ant-Man and so on. Now there are other franchises, like I say, that aren't canon with those. They are Marvel characters, and Marvel Studios may have a hand maybe in producing them, but they don't make the film with that level of control. So franchises like Amazing Spider-Man or the previous Spider-Man films were owned by Sony, so they aren't, at this current time anyway, canon with the Marvel Cinematic Studios films. There's also the X-Men franchise and the Fantastic Four, which is licensed to 20th Century Fox, so you're not really going to see any crossovers there, like I say, unless an agreement is met at some point, which is very doubtful at this stage. So you did ask about the X-Men characters. The examples I'm going to give here of comics are the Marvel Cinematic Studio tie-in ones, but there are equally just the same. There are X-Men graphic novels that you can read, but I'm just going to throw out the ones that tie in with the Marvel Cinematic Universe itself, as it's called. Like I say, that's all the films that tie in with the Avengers. So you don't really need to have read the comics. There's no kind of secret password you can get as such. I mean, there are some Easter eggs that they throw in there, like little in-jokes, like a nod to the people that have read the comics. Plenty of examples of that. I've done videos about that if you want to see it, but you just kind of type in like Marvel film Easter eggs, maybe on YouTube. There's a lot of the like presentations, a lot better than mine, where they kind of go through every time in a film something gets mentioned, like what it's kind of referenced from. But you're basically asking where to start with the comics because you want to know what the films are based on, which is great. I mean, I'm the same. You know, I've done exactly the same, so it's a fair question. There's a number of roads I can go down. I go into specific titles, which I guess you want to do because you want in recommendations of where to start. So, I mean, my thing tends to be, if I like a film and a character that's in the film, say Iron Man, for example, a very popular character, I kind of wanted to read the comics it was based on. I wanted to see, you know, like where it all started. And not just like one of the best ones, like maybe there was like a story from like the 80s or something that was like a big one. I wanted to read the original one. I wanted to start right at the beginning and just kind of see how it's changed since then. So something with Iron Man, for example, that got started in, I think it was 1962 from memory. I haven't researched this before I did the video. I'm just kind of going off the top of my head. So say Iron Man, you wanted to know the origin story. You want to read the original origin story because they revamped it over the years. You're best getting that in a graphic novel collection. That is a book which kind of sandwiches together a lot of comics, like individual issues. Sometimes the comics that kind of run in a straight sequence, like of issues like 34, 35, 36. Sometimes it's just like the best of kind of thing. And sometimes with comics single issues, you can just read a single issue and it's kind of self-contained. Sometimes it'll be like a big story where you have to kind of read the whole lot to get what's going on. So, as I say, Iron Man. Now, the reason I'm doing this video here rather than in the other room is because I've got a lot of my comics in the background here. And if there's a character you want to know more of, the best thing from Marvel, in my opinion, is to get what is called Marvel Platinum Collection, and it'll say the definitive Iron Man, for example. There's the definitive Thor as well. That's another one. Again, Marvel Platinum Collection. There's quite a lot of these. There's the definitive Avengers. Obviously, that's the collection of superheroes. Ones that I've collected. The Incredible Hulk, the definitive Captain America. There's others that I don't have. There's the Wolverine one, which I think is quite expensive if you can get hold of it. There's a definitive Guardians of the Galaxy. Spider-Man. They haven't done all of them. I know there's a Silver Surfer one as well, which I've got. But if you're looking for these in the shops, look for that basically along the spine. You will see it on the shelves if you're looking in a shop. I wouldn't recommend buying these in a shop though because they can be quite expensive. You're best off just getting it online. Even if it's second hand, if it says it's good quality, it usually is. I think this was second hand and there's nothing wrong with it. It's not dog-eared or anything like that. But as you can see, it's got a lot of stuff to it. And with these, what they tend to do with the Marvel Platinum collections, or the definitive collections as they're also known, it lists on the inside what all the comics are and when they were published. So it'll say Tales of Suspense number 39, March 1963. Because Iron Man didn't have his own comic to start with, he just appeared in another comic that was called Tales of Suspense, and then he got his own comic because he was very popular. There's an introduction by Stan Lee, which is standard in these. It was written in 2008, so that was when the first film came out. And with these, they've kind of colorised them a little bit better than they originally were. From what I understand, I've not read the original, but from what I understand, they've kind of tidied the colour up and stuff. And so this is the original. That's the first time we ever got to see Iron Man. That was a cover of the first ever comic that had Iron Man in it. And in this one, you can kind of see the artwork there. There's full-on reviews of these. You can see that other people have done. They're a lot better than mine. And in fact, there's a guy called Linkara. If you look up Linkara, I think his video is, well, his website is Atop the Fourth Wall, and he's a very funny guy. and he's reviewed this pretty much like panel for panel and kind of read it out and stuff and taken the piss out of it. This specific comic, so I'm not going to get too much into it. But you can see here, this is when Iron Man was first created. It's got similarities to the film as well. He basically gets kidnapped and has to create the Iron Man suit to escape. But that's the first issue, and then it just kind of goes on. This is, I think it's Stan Lee that actually selected which issues were going to get put in this collection. And there's a lot of different stuff in here, and it kind of spans from the 60s through the 70s, 80s and 90s. So you can see as you get further into it, the artwork does kind of improve a bit. So there's like stuff here where he fought the Hulk, and you can see obviously Iron Man's suit got a lot better as well. And some stuff with Ant-Man here as well. This is a good story as well, where Iron Man's suit gets knackered up in a fight with the Hulk, and Ant-Man has to shrink down, go inside Iron Man's suit, kind of like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids kind of thing. Like, because he's really small, it's like an entire like universe basically in Iron Man's suit, and kind of break him out before he runs out of air. It's a good story. There's some stuff here with Doctor Doom, which is a Fantastic Four character. What's great about the comics is obviously they can do crossovers that you can't do in the films, because, like, for example, 20th Century Fox own the movie license for Fantastic Four, so you're not really going to see Doctor Doom and Iron Man on screen together anytime soon. So you can kind of see that in comics. Comics do crossovers all the time, even ones that aren't in the same universe. They've done like Star Trek and X-Men crossovers before, which is mental. But yeah, as I say, as it goes on, you can see the artwork improves, and it pretty much brings us up to like modern kind of comic book artwork. It's very different to what you had in the 60s. So these are a good place to start. Anyway, that's your question. If I mean, this is where I pretty much started. I'm not massively into comics. I'm more into films. It's the films that got me into these and interested in them. I don't own a huge amount, but what I've collected is what I've kind of done research on as to what I think would be a good read, and that's pretty much it. Now, that's generally speaking. I'm talking about the origin stuff. There are other collections, not just the definitive or the platinum collections. There's also what's known as Marvel Masterworks, and some of these can be very expensive. I mean, this one was a bit cheaper. I just bought the ones that I could afford, basically. But you can get them in hardback, and they can be very expensive. And they usually publish 10 issues per volume, and this is Golden Age Captain America. So this is Captain America when it was published in World War II era. It was basically kind of, as you saw in the film, like a propaganda, an anti-Nazi propaganda piece at the time. So it was, you know, altruistic propaganda, obviously. Yeah, you can kind of see stuff like that's the original cover of Captain America where he's punching out Hitler. So kind of a classic. Now, I was talking about nods before in the films. As if you say you've seen Captain America: The First Avenger for the first time, remember the bit where he's on stage and he's selling war bonds? Well, actually, that's what, when you would have bought these back in the Second World War era, you could buy war bonds to like fund the war machine against the Nazis, basically. So they kind of had him doing that in the film. It's kind of like an ironic nod. But point is, anyway, if you remember that bit in the film where he's on stage, there's a bit where, kind of panto style, there's a guy dressed as Hitler and he's like sneaking up behind Captain America. And there's a lot of kids shouting, "He's behind you," like I say, panto style. And he punches Hitler out. That's what they call an Easter egg, because that was a joke to the original cover where he's punching out Hitler. And so little stuff like that, anyway. But yeah, these, like I said, this is the Masterworks collection. If you're looking for this in the shops, that's what you kind of need to look for. You can see the Marvel Masterworks logo there. And like I said, some of these can be very expensive. I got this fairly cheap off Amazon. But you can see the artwork in this is, that's what it was like in the 1940s. Brilliant stuff, really good artwork. I think, again, they've kind of tidied the colours up and stuff like that over the years. And a lot of the time they'll include some of your posters and stuff like that you would get inside them. So that's all great as well. There's a lot of individual stuff, just random stuff as well. I mean, like Captain America and Wolverine, there's just a lot of little bits and pieces. That's just something I bought randomly. So that's your origin stuff anyway. Like I said, they're very good collections to get. So if you're gonna start buying these, those are ones to get. And if you go on Amazon, you can get a lot of them very cheap, like for $10 or something. That's about what I would want to pay for something like that. but some of them are very expensive. There is an Ant-Man one, definitive Ant-Man Platinum Collection, which I wished I'd bought up till a few months ago, because the Ant-Man film's coming out, it's become like supply and demand. I think it was probably a bit rarer before, but nobody really was all that interested. But now there's an Ant-Man film coming out, demand has gone up, and now you're paying about 60 odd quid for that. So I wish I bought it. Like it'd been on my Amazon wish list for like months as well, maybe even a year, and I just kind of left it there. I was like, oh, I'll get around to picking it up, and forget it now. There's a Wolverine one as well that's the same. That was about a tenner, but it's just shot up for some reason. I don't know. That's on Amazon anyway. I'm sure there's if you check places like eBay every now and again, you will eventually find one that's more in your price range anyway. But that's the origin stuff. Now there are specific stories and graphic novels that you can get that are based on a lot of the films that have either come out or are coming out. Some of them are. There's Age of Ultron. This is not the film. This is in name only, really. There's obviously Avengers Age of Ultron coming out in May. And this is the Age of Ultron Avengers, basically. Or just Marvel graphic novel. And it's a collection of, 10 issues. Don't buy this thinking this is what you're going to see in the upcoming film. It's not the same. I mean, the main characters in this story are Wolverine, who is not in the Avengers. 20th Century Fox licensed film franchise. And also Sue Storm out of the Fantastic Four. She's another one of the main characters. Ant-Man is in it quite a bit, because he creates Ultron in the comics, so ultimately he's kind of fundamental to the Ultron stuff. And it's kind of a time travel story as well, a bit more like Days of Future Past than probably the Age of Ultron film is going to be. But it's a good graphic novel, very good. I got it for Christmas. And you can get this in shops. It's priced £16.99, but just go on Amazon, get it second hand in good condition, like I think this is, and you can probably get it for like a tenner or something. So there's that. There are others where they presumably will be very closely connected to the film. Well, the source material, like the comics, will be closely connected. And that is the upcoming Captain America film, Captain America 3, essentially, which is out in a year's time in May, I think April, May 2016. And Civil War, they're basically kind of dubbing it as Captain America versus Iron Man, which is what it's going to essentially be in the film. And I've talked about this in other videos, but I'll just kind of give it a quick mention here. This is a comic book, a very popular one. It just kind of spawned off a whole load of Civil War stuff. It was a very post 9/11 graphic novel where after 9/11, obviously, there was a whole issue of like threats and terrorism and stuff. But it was basically that was being pointed at the American people. It's like, you are a suspect, you are an enemy of freedom if you're on our side, basically. And a lot of people saying, well, you're like invading the planet based on 9/11. We haven't got your back on this. It's like, well, you're an enemy of freedom then. And you had like perfectly good people arguing with each other over this issue. So this was kind of came out of all that, and it was basically there was an incident. Superheroes were responsible. Well, superheroes kind of were responsible for a lot of people's deaths, and there came this Superhero Registration Act where anyone actively being a superhero had to register with the government, which also included revealing their secret identity. So Spider-Man, no more secret identity. The government would want to know that he is Peter Parker, and so on. Iron Man was on the side of the registration. He was the one pushing it. Captain America, on the other hand, was all for freedom, like genuine freedom, not just sucking up to the government. And fought against it. So you had these two factions basically, and that was a civil war. It's kind of what they're going to do in the upcoming film, the upcoming Marvel film. It's called Captain America Civil War, so fairly closely based on this from what I imagine. Now there's going to be certain elements that aren't going to come into that, because obviously, like I say in this, the whole issue of revealing secret identities is pretty much irrelevant in the film franchise, because we all know in the film, you know Tony Stark is Iron Man. That's not a secret. Steve Rogers is Captain America. He's got his own museum as to who he is. I mean, I think that's the case in these as well. But a lot of the superheroes don't in the films. Like I said, there's no real secret identities so far, anyway. So there's going to be differences. Don't get me wrong, but I think at its heart, it's going to be very closely based on stuff that happens in this. And this was something that brought a lot of characters together as well in this. Now, what was the point I was going to make about that? This is something as well, because it was so popular, the fan demand for this is pretty much why the film's going to happen, because it was such a big comic at the time. So, we've got that to look forward to. I'm sort of looking forward to that more than Avengers Age of Ultron, to be honest. But I think what they're going to do with the film franchise is, in Avengers Age of Ultron, Tony Stark sort of is the main player that creates Ultron. A lot of people are going to die because of that. So Iron Man is going to feel guilt for what he has done. And he's basically... there will be a push to basically blame superheroes for this. For all the people that died. They're going to say, well, you created Ultron, you know, a lot of people are dead because of you. You need to be regulated by the government. You know, we can't just have you running loose doing your stuff. And obviously Hulk is a very dangerous, you know, character. So there's going to be this push to register superheroes with the government. But then you're going to have Captain America, who's basically saying, well, hang on a minute, you want us to register with the government, the same government that got taken over by Hydra, by stealth, for years and years and nobody knew? You want us to register with that? You want us to be in check by that? No way, man. So you're going to have these two sides against each other. And I think that's going to be a really good film. I'm hoping it is. And that's going to be out around about the same time as Batman vs Superman as well. So you're going to have that spring next year, you're going to have a theme of superhero versus superhero films. So I'll be very good with that. What else is there? Other comics. Kind of rambled on a bit about that, but at its heart, the current wave of Marvel films is leading up to... I mean, as much as things are leading up to our Civil War, it's leading up to something even bigger. And that is coming out in 2018 and 2019. It's so big they're having to do it in two films, basically. That's going to be called Avengers Infinity War Part 1 and 2. Like I say, they're coming out in 2018, 2019. And you're going to have this character called Thanos, who... Now, I know you said you've only just started watching the Marvel films. I'm going to assume you've been watching in chronological order. So I'm going to, if you're saying the last one you watched was Captain America First Avenger, I'm going to assume you haven't seen the Avengers Assemble film. Maybe you have. I'm not going to spoil it, but there is a scene at the end of the film where you see a character midway into the end credits called Thanos. And I think somewhere I've actually got a figure of him somewhere. Bear with me. That's this guy here, Thanos. And he is basically a really tough bad guy in the Marvel comics. And he is pretty much an overlord, and he's... I mean, if you think Hulk is strong, this guy can just kind of strangle him, basically, with considerable ease. And they're going to bring him fully into the films. Now, I know you said you haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy, but Thanos is in that anyway. He's got a couple of roles in it. He's not in it for long. If you've seen Star Wars, you remember Empire Strikes Back when you saw the Emperor character? You didn't see him for very long. It was Return of the Jedi where he kind of like was fully rolled out. It's kind of like what they've done with Thanos. They've had a few you've had a few glimpses of him here and there, and he's had a few things to sort of say, but he's not been fully kind of introduced yet. So they're going to roll him out fully in Infinity War Part 1 and 2. So what the Infinity War as well is, and this is where what it's based on, there's this thing called the Infinity Gauntlet. And in the comics, there are these 6 Infinity Stones, and they represent different things like time, reality, soul, all that kind of stuff, and power. But he collects these stones, puts them into a glove, and basically becomes like the ultimate god. And it all kicks off, and he kills half the universe, literally half the universe, with a click of his finger, because he's got the glove on. He's literally a click of his finger, and half the universe dead. So that's an epic story, and that's in the Infinity Gauntlet. So I would recommend you get that as well, because really, even if kind of not even going into the fact that they're doing a film based on it, it's still a very good story. Now there's kind of a trilogy of graphic novels that I've collected. There's other stuff as well, don't get me wrong. But Thanos was a character, I think they introduced him in the 70s, and he first appeared in Iron Man number 55. Now you can get this. This is the original Thanos stories in one big graphic novel put together. It spanned over a lot of years, and they just took all of his kind of appearances and put them into one graphic novel, and it kind of creates like a fairly fluid like story in and of itself. It's basically like just getting a load of random episodes of like a soap or something, and just putting them together and just making a film out of it. And because of the kind of recurring story that was going on in these random episodes, it made quite a good film when you put it all together. That's what they did with this. It was basically every appearance, not every appearance, but the main appearances by Thanos put together, and it's one big kind of story. And this was from the 70s, and you've got Avengers. It's called Avengers versus Thanos, so this is what you want to look for. Again, not too expensive. And this was the original stuff with him. And at the end of it, they basically killed him, and he didn't. I think he was out of the comics for quite a long time, like 15 years at least. But they brought him back in the 90s with the Infinity Gauntlet and did this story with him. Now, I wouldn't rush into getting the Infinity Gauntlet. You want to get this first, called Silver Surfer Rebirth of Thanos, because this is basically the story of Thanos putting together the Infinity Gauntlet. So you need to get that first, then this. I mean, you can just get this, but at this point, he's got the Gauntlet right at the beginning of the story, and he got it in this. So these are the three, like I say, I'll just say it again. Avengers versus Thanos, which is the early stuff. Then he kind of went away for a while. They brought him back, Silver Surfer Rebirth of Thanos, and then the Infinity Gauntlet. Like I say, I think that's what they're going to do with these films, because in the films they've introduced the Infinity Stones, and it's been referred to that there are 6 of them, and that they're kind of being collected, and you know that Thanos is after them as well. If you've seen Captain America the First Avenger, remember that blue cube? That's called a Tesseract, or the Cosmic Cube in the comics. That's an Infinity Stone in the films. It's not an Infinity Stone in the comics though. The Cosmic Cube is just a Cosmic Cube, and then there are the Infinity Stones. In the films you've kind of changed it a bit and said that the Tesseract, the Cosmic Cube, is an Infinity Stone. But I was a bit kind of confused at first when they said that. That's like saying that the Holy Grail is the Ark of the Covenant from Raiders of the Lost Ark or something, and saying that the two are the same thing. It's like, well, they're not. There's the Holy Grail and there's the Ark of the Covenant. There's 2 separate things. But that's where they're going in the films anyway. So lots of stuff there. Anyway, these are just the things that I've kind of picked up on. I'm sure there's a lot more as well. But like I say, with Thanos, he's a really cool character. Really tough guy basically. Not much else I can suggest. That was basically what the comics are based on. Now, I did say before, comics aren't canon with the films. I meant those comics. There are some that are supposed to be. And that's these. Now, I've done individual reviews for each of these. These are called Marvel Cinematic Universe Official Tie-Ins. So the stuff that you see in the films is supposed to tie in with these. These are like, you know, like you've got your Star Wars films and you've got your Star Wars books, your novels are kind of like expanded universe, and they're supposed to be canon. These are, in the same vein, supposed to be canon with the films. So these were specially written when the films come out, just to kind of enrich it a little bit. Now, you can kind of argue, is it canon, is it not? Well, it's an official tie-in, so I guess it is, but that's up to you. I think I'll leave it there anyway, because I've rambled on quite a bit, and I've given you plenty of places to start anyway. So if you are wanting to buy these, feel free to just kind of look on Amazon, and if you want any help, just give us a message, and I'll point out a few things. Maybe if you want to know where to get them cheap, like I say, Amazon's probably the best place, but there's also eBay as well. Definitely wouldn't recommend buying these in shops, because they'll charge maximum price, so you can be paying a lot for these. Like I said, I'm going to leave it there anyway. Now, I do have a video coming up, another Marvel one. If you may remember last year, I did a review of these Kinder Surprise toys. They were called Twist Heads. Well, there's a new wave of these that come out this year for 2015, and it's a bit earlier than it was last year. I think it was last spring when they came out, but they've done another wave of them. So I'm going to do a review of them, so obviously if you're watching this and you're interested in Marvel and stuff like that and collectible stuff, check that out. I'll probably be posting that next day or two. If not, the same night that this goes up, so we'll see anyway. So check back. Website is brandxreviews.com. Plenty more news and information on there. I don't just do videos on YouTube, I also post stuff on there as well when stories come out, and trailers and things like that. So My website, I'm going to say, yeah, it's a pretty good one, but I'm fairly proud of it, so check that out. And like I said, there's a YouTube channel, you can subscribe on there. Please feel free to do that. And there's also a Facebook page as well. All of these you can find through the social media section at brandxreviews.com, so check that out. And thanks again, Sam, for the submission. If there's anything else you want to ask, feel free to send it in, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. But for now, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for watching.